We know one of the pains of being somebody who loves to innovate, to create, to try and push the boundaries is that you're always in transition. You're always in this constant state of change. And therefore, you're having to make decisions at a rate that is not kind of normal for the average person. And I'm guessing that you're like this. If you're a leader, an entrepreneur, an athlete, a pioneer, somebody who's trying to really produce change and to go to the next level, to raise your performance, then you're constantly in this state of moving, and therefore the rate of decision making, because of the transitions that you're in, is high. And so if you have the problem that I've had, then you'll realize that it almost becomes the curse of being somebody who is constantly trying to progress. And that is in the area of decision making. When is the right time to make the decision, to make your move, to make the change? And this has become a hugely painful area for me. And I guess when I look back, there was one particular situation that I was involved in trying to make an impact in a sector that I wasn't used to working in. And I won't go into the story in its entirety, but essentially, I just thought everybody that was in that sector was trying to produce a solution for that sector. And so I assumed, I guess maybe naively, that everybody was wanting anybody who had a solution to win. Very naive, I know. And I remember having a conversation with somebody who had an agenda, but I didn't realize it at the time. And they took something that I said, and then it got twisted, and it ended up meaning that we weren't able to bring that creative solution to that sector. And I think since that moment, it's created a level of paranoia. It's caused me to have some paralysis of analysis in my decision making, because I made a bad decision to trust in that moment, that person, and to make that a naive assumption. And so it only takes for a moment like that in the past to dog you in your present when it comes to making a decision. Am I making the right decision? Is now the right time? I can look back and see times when I went too early on a decision, I went too late on a decision, and the more experiences that you accumulate, the more exhausting it can become when it comes to making decisions. So I've really been trying to unpack this and trying to understand this, especially as I work with people who are leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, pioneers, people really trying to make progress. I want to help them, and in helping them, I often help myself. And so I really want to understand, how do you reframe trying to make the perfect decision? Because that's the challenge. It's very often what we're telling ourselves in this process that is creating the issue. And I will always try and make the perfect decision. Now, of course, I'm an imperfect person. So an imperfect person trying to make the perfect decision, I mean, right there's an issue. So I want to talk just for a few minutes, and I hope this helps you, about how we can move from trying to make a perfect decision to making a peace-led decision. And I'll explain what I mean. I was in the car the other day, and I was traveling with my son, and I asked him just to change the radio station that we were listening to, but he ended up switching it from digital to analog. And I said, just switch it back to DAB. And I had to explain what digital radio was, and that there actually was a difference between digital and analog, because, of course, he's part of a generation that is used to crystal clear broadcasting and hasn't had to have the experiences that some of us have had, where we've had to really try and tune into a radio station and battle with interference from other radio stations or other signals that were trying to get in on that frequency. And anyway, I felt very old trying to explain this to him. But it got me thinking, because the problem with trying to make a perfect decision is interference. There's a huge amount of interference that comes when we try and make a perfect decision. All of a sudden, we get the alternative frequencies of people's opinions that may be sitting in our subconscious, or even people that are around us. We get messaging from media, which is kind of bombarding us constantly 24/7. We get the fears of our past. We get the memories of times when we've not made a great decision. We get the self-critical narrative of how we see ourselves, how we see other people, how we see our future. And all of this becomes a huge amount of interference. And what we need when making decisions on timing is clarity. But the problem is, very often we've got confusion and not clarity. So I just want to give us a few questions, because questions ultimately enable clarity to emerge. I don't believe that clarity is out there somewhere that's going to arrive at us. And so it's a bit like confidence. I often talk to people in high performance, in elite environments, that confidence, which of course is what everybody wants, confidence isn't out there that's suddenly going to come to you. Yes, I can be boosted in my confidence by somebody saying something to me, but ultimately, if I want a consistent source of confidence, I've got to learn how to build it, not rely upon a boost of confidence. And so it's something that we generate from within, and clarity is exactly the same. So how can I generate clarity? How can I move from being a perfect-led person when it comes to decision making to a peace-led person? Because ultimately, clarity emerges from a state of peace. Clarity emerges from a state of peace. So if you think about the state of confusion, what's happening? Well, that's not peaceful. It's chaotic. There's messaging happening all over the place. There's this levels of anxiety rise. Ultimately, it's fear that drives it. And fear is the opposite of peace. Okay, so how do we start to generate peace? Well, we've got to first of all recognize that there is interference we've got to deal with. We've got to shut down the frequencies of interference. So as I ask these 4 questions that I'm going to give to you right now, that I personally am going to keep going through, because it's not something that is a tick box. Like once you've dealt with it, you've sorted it. It's something that becomes a discipline. So here are 4 questions that we can use to reduce the interference, which is fear, and to amplify the voice of clarity, okay? And to create that peace-led decision on timing. Because I want you to know that you have the ability to make great decisions about timing. Like it starts there. It starts with actually saying, I believe I have the ability. I believe you do. I believe that you carry in you an innate ability to intuit and to know when is the right time to make this choice and this decision. We've just got to close down that interference. So here's question number 1. What person or principle is informing this decision? What person or principle is informing this decision? It starts from a place of high self-awareness. So immediately it's about almost assuming that if I'm not careful, I'm going to start this decision-making process from a wrong starting point, okay? So I've got to relegate any feeling that I've got. I've got to relegate any fear that I've got. So whatever that interference is, I've got to relegate all of those voices, all of those doubts. I've got to relegate it beneath the answer to this question. So what's the principle? What's the principle? The unchanging truth, the tried and tested law that is at work. That and again, a principle doesn't have an emotion. A principle isn't shaped by past experiences. A principle is a principle, okay? And principles are incredible when it comes to shutting down interference. So what's the principle, the unchanging truth, the unchanging law that's been tried and tested that is appropriate for this decision? Okay, and relegate all emotion and all speculation, because that's what fear is. Fear is internal speculation. Relegate it beneath that principle. So the question also says, what person is informing this decision? So it may be that actually what I need to understand is, okay, is this decision going to be led by the person that my self-doubt says that I am, which is usually, I'm not able, I can't, I won't, I haven't, and that generates the fear and the self-doubt and the paralysis of analysis. But actually, I'm going to relegate all of that self-doubt below a value. So a value is who you believe you are in this moment. One of my values is I am clarity, so I can create a way where there seems to be no way. That's one of my values. So in this moment, is it the person of clarity that I believe I am, or is it the person of confusion that I have believed that I am? Okay, so all of a sudden, a value, the person that I believe I am, is going to inform this decision. Because the problem is our default position is often a place of fear. So that's where the issue comes. And when we operate out of fear, we can end up going too soon on a decision for fear of missing out. And so our decision is driven by maybe an emotional need that we've got, which is the next question that I'm coming to. Or it could be delayed decision. In other words, we could have gone, but we didn't for fear of an outcome or fear of what might happen. And so, again, ultimately, fear has been in the driving seat rather than confidence, a confidence in the principle or a confidence in the value. Okay, so the law that's going to drive this decision or the person that I believe I am that's going to drive this decision. So it's all about putting that in place first of all. So what personal principle is informing this decision? And again, this is huge personally in our decision making, but also corporately in our teams, in our organizations, because our organizations are made up of people, and people are either driven by confidence or fear, and people will naturally default to fear. And again, it's not fear that everyone is sat in the corner sucking their thumb, afraid of what's going to happen. I'm not talking always about that obvious like fear, but fear can drive even the person that looks like they're the most confident person in the world. But why is it that they're communicating this high level of exuberance? Well, sometimes it's for fear that people won't accept me or people won't like me. And so fear can drive an appearance that looks completely opposite to fear, but actually it's still rooted in fear. So anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But the second question we can ask to start to create a peace-led process on decision-making when it comes to timing is this decision driven by the mission or my mood? Is this decision driven by the mission or my mood? You see, I used to have a dog called Tammy, and Tammy was a West Highland White Terrier. It was our first dog, and we never knew what to do, to be honest, with dogs back then. And I say back then, it's almost like it was 200 years ago. But we never trained Tammy. We never taught her what to do as a dog. And so, to train her in kind of good habits. So when we took her for a walk, we would take her so far, and then she'd just decide, I don't want to walk anymore. But invariably, the point at which she decided she didn't want to walk anymore was the furthest away from the house, and she would just lie down and refuse to move. And so, you're trying to get her to go, you're trying to bribe her, you're trying to, encourage her to make the walk back, but there's only so far you can drag a dog before the RSPCA get involved. And, I wouldn't want to do that anyway because she was a gorgeous dog. But I had to pick her up. I used to carry her and used to walk past the normal dog walkers who were walking their dogs, and their dogs were doing exactly as they should do. And so I'm walking past people that are dog owners, but I was dog owned. Like Tammy owned me. I was doing what she wanted, not the other way around. And it's the same with our mood. Our mood can be like Tammy, that if we don't train our mood trains us. And so emotion, it's really important. Emotion it can be a man's best friend, but we can end up making it a poor master. So am I in this decision when it comes to timing? Okay, great question. Am I looking to derive a feeling from this decision? Am I looking for an outcome that's going to feed some emotional need that I have? Now, again, it's not saying that getting a positive emotional feed from a decision is a bad thing, but But if we're doing it to get that, then that's when our decision-making can become skewed. That's when actually it stops becoming a decision led by mission, which ultimately mission is about who am I serving? Who am I trying to impact? Who am I doing this for? It's the why question, okay? So decision making from a place of peace comes when I can articulate that this decision is being driven by the mission. Okay, it's being driven by the mission as a team, as an organization. Why are we making this decision? Is it driven by the mood of the team? Because let's face it, sometimes teams go through times when things are tough and sometimes we just want to feel good. And so actually we start to make decisions that are going to create a better feel. But the problem is a better feel right now might be an even more costly choice in a few months' time. Okay, it happens in recruitment. I mean, I've been there. I'm sure you've been there. The feeling of getting somebody in place now, we want that feeling. But the problem is we rush it, and then 3 months in, they're a nightmare, and we're regretting that decision. Can you see what I mean? Like, that is making a decision based upon mood and not mission. Like, is this person fit for the mission, or are we just trying to fit them in because the mood of the company or the mood of me right now is I just need somebody? It happens personally. How many people have ended up in relationships just because they don't want to be around their friends who have all got partners, and I just need to get a partner. And all of a sudden, my decision is driven by by mood rather than mission. Okay, I hope you get the idea. So again, this is how we can start to create that clarity and create a sense of internal peace so that we make great decisions about the timing of our choices. Third question is this: is the priority to please or to progress? Is the priority to please or to progress? Again, I see this in organizational life. When we're not able to be brutally honest with others in a team, okay, and we don't have conversations that are vulnerable. We don't have conversations that deal with the real issues. The proverbial elephant is permanently at home in the office. Then what happens is decision making on timing is driven by trying to please people rather than trying to actually create progress. When we are leaders, innovators, people trying to push the boundaries, not everyone is going to get it. Not everyone is going to be on board. Not everybody is going to think that that is a sane decision. Some people are going to think you're crazy. But that's where in leadership we have to discern between competing agendas and compatible agendas. And this is probably content for another conversation, but let me just say this right now. I've learned in my journey that creative solutions don't win with fixed agendas. If you're a creative and you're looking for a way of making something happen, of creating real progress, but you're surrounded by people with fixed agendas, and fixed agendas are normally put together and rooted in fear, their own personal fear. Fear of losing control, fear of losing position, fear of losing power. So this comes down to, okay, have I got the right people around me? But again, if our decision making is being, especially on timing, is being informed by trying to please people, then this is not a great decision. It is not going to work out well, okay? It may create an initial sense of not rocking the boat, but the problem is sometimes the boat needs rocking because it's carrying too many of the wrong people, okay? So again, just ask yourself the question, is this decision being driven by my wanting to please people or to actually produce progress? Is the priority of the team, is the priority of the relationship, again, this personal professional here, to actually create progress? And of course, this comes back down to clarity of vision. What is the vision that is leading us? Ultimately, the vision is not to keep everybody happy. The vision of my marriage, okay, to Leanne, is not to make Leanne happy. Now, you may think, well, that's a strange thing to say. And you know, I really hope that Leanne's objective is not to make Gareth happy. Our objective together as a couple is to be fruitful. In other words, to to realize our potential, and that with the belief that the two of us together have more potential than we do on our own. So we have to have a vision that leads us. So that means that vision can challenge Gareth, that vision can challenge Leanne, when sometimes maybe the decision is going to really be a costly decision, or it's going to challenge our own insecurities. Actually, am I wanting to settle for feeling comfortable, or do I really want that vision? So can you see, in this moment, we create peace by starting to ask these questions, because questions generate clarity, and it starts to cause the interference of competing voices and competing agendas to start to diminish, and for the clarity of what is true and that is congruent with who we are to rise. Okay, the final question is this, and it's a speculative question, but I think it's a great question. What advice would my 90-year-old self give me now? What advice would my 90-year-old self give me now? I guess another way of phrasing this, or a principle, would be let your legacy have the final say. Let the ultimate picture of what you're trying to achieve or that you want to leave behind have the final say. Because the problem is we often, and this is where the pain of decision making comes in the present, we place too much emphasis on how much this moment means. In fact, what we usually do as human beings is we overemphasize the big moments of our lives as being the critical moments, and actually forget that it's the constant small choices every day that actually have the large shaping influence in our lives. So actually, let's just take the pressure off. Let's just say, okay, right now, what would my 90-year-old self say to me right now? Like the legacy that I want to leave behind. And again, this may create another question for us, because maybe we haven't articulated what is the legacy that I want to leave behind. What do I want 500 years from now people to be experiencing because I was alive? What do I want to have changed in society? What do I want to have been a part of? And allow that to speak to the now. Because what happens is legacy pulls me out of the picture and pulls the people that I'm serving and puts them front and center. Because let's face it, behind all of this, it's me getting in the way. It's you getting in the way. It's when we make a mission that is about serving people actually try and fit with a drive that is about how I look. It's incompatible. The two don't go together, and that's where the confusion comes. That's where the incongruency happens. That's why we don't feel peaceful about our decision making. But you can see how answering these questions starts to reduce that interference, to strip away. And let's face it, it's a bit embarrassing sometimes. And I get embarrassed when I think, do you know what, actually, Gareth, you've been making this about you. Like, I should know by now, like 44 years into this journey, I should know by now. But yet human nature, as it is, will keep trying to make it about me, putting me at the center. So every day I've got to challenge that default position. So legacy pulls me out of the picture. Legacy, I wrote in my book, The Winning Conversation and Winning Keys. Legacy is an acrostic. Let eternity guide all the choices you make. Let eternity guide all the choices you make. In other words, go from the ultimate perspective and allow that to challenge the immediate moment. So I really hope that this has got you thinking. It's giving you some questions anyway. I'll put the questions into the information below. And please, why don't you let me know how this has helped you or how it's got you thinking. I'd love to hear of how you have implemented these questions and some of the outcomes. I'd love to kind of generate that conversation. I want this place and space to be where you as a leader, as an entrepreneur, an athlete, a pioneer, that person who feels that moral responsibility. And it is that. It's not just like wanting to do something good or to be the best. You actually feel it's a moral responsibility you have to deliver on your potential. Well, I'm here to cheer you on. So come on, let's use these questions to take back control, to be courageous, and to release that greatness that's in you. And until next time, take care and I'll speak to you soon.